and have ready with you. But I will try and guide you to some pages as we're going through. But anyway, hopefully you'll be able to hear clearly everything that is being said. As Mike also reminded us, Pesach is really a time for questions, but it becomes more difficult when we've got 140, as we do now already, 140 screens. I mean, I can't see all the screens. I can only see something like 15 of them. So that means there's another 125 that I can't see. It makes asking questions a bit more difficult. Well, not a bit more difficult, dramatically more difficult. But what we will try and do is we will try and monitor the chat and see if we can answer some questions as we go along. But if we can't, then please forgive us and we'll take them at the end or even after the Seder itself. Because if we could be here till midnight. There is a legend that the Seder went on until at least midnight. But I understand that we are supposed to be closed by about 9 o'clock. So that's at least closer than midnight. But there we are. So I can see we've got greetings already from Hampshire, from Islington North. I can't think why I got Islington North, but there we are. It's the only constituency I'll mention this evening. My own is, of course, Chipping Barnet, held by that bastion of socialism, Theresa Villiers, who's my local member of parliament. But there we are. So I can see Cambridge coming through. I've seen Manchester. I've seen London. And of course, I've already mentioned Israel and Palestine. If you're from another country, I can see the Palestinian History Tapestry projects coming in. Particularly if you're from another country, it'd be lovely to hear from you. All right, Islington South, you get a mention too, since I know you're MP and got some friends living there. So that's Islington South. I know Finch and Golders Green will come up in a minute. There's Bristol and Oxford. So, and Herefordshire, great, where I'm serving as a rabbi in Gloucestershire, Herefordshire and Worcestershire. And now Tottenham's coming up. There we are. We're now going to get underway. If you're with me in your Haggadah, we're beginning on page 2 with an introduction.
So before you start, I forgot to say we're going to be recording this Seder, but that shouldn't worry anyone because if I've got the settings right, only the people who are speaking will be visible.
Thank you. You've now had greetings from Cambridgeshire, Yorkshire. So just to remind you, things can be being recorded. Some of us can't have worse reputations in the Jewish press than we already have, so it won't make a difference if anything's recorded and passed on to the Jewish News or the Jewish Chronicle, whom, of course, we would welcome were they here this evening, and who would no doubt produce a highly accurate report of all the proceedings of the evening. We now move on to our introduction, which begins by reminding us that this Seder takes place in an unusual moment. We've been living through an extraordinary and challenging period, and each of us has faced difficulties. Our own mortality, the possible death of a loved one, illness and underemployment, loneliness and isolation, changed patterns of work and communication. Today in the United Kingdom, we are slowly emerging from this year-long nightmare, the plague of COVID-19. Sad to report, there have been 2.8 million deaths worldwide, and 127,000 in the United Kingdom. We remember them, their families, and their loved ones who carry so much grief. And we acknowledge too those with long COVID whose health issues are not yet fully resolved. But there are many types of vaccine. Millions have already been vaccinated. And while huge disparities remain worldwide, we dare to dream that the pandemic is abating. The Jewish festival of Pesach, or Passover, recalls the biblical Hebrews' exodus from Egypt and the survival of Jews and Judaism. We are conscious of its own particular resonance for Jews, but are aware too of its universal hope, the liberation of all who are enslaved. The Uyghurs, the Yazidis, the Rohingya, the Tigrayans, and others struggling to survive, and all those who have been forced to make an exodus from their homelands. We dare to dream that they will be able to build new homes and not only survive, but thrive. Sadly, around the world, authoritarian leaders and racist sentiments seemingly ascendant. In Brazil, India, Hungary, and elsewhere. Our peoples are uniting to fight for their freedom, their rights, and a fair livelihood, including the farmers keeping up the world's biggest strike in India, the black people and their allies demanding racial justice in the United States, women and male allies demanding the freedom to live safely without the threat of violence inside or outside their homes. We make connections with contemporary struggles for justice, equality, and freedom from oppression. And we look forward to the day of liberation for all. We and they dare to dream. And our thoughts turn to the Palestinians and their progressive Jewish allies around the world, who continue to struggle for justice, rights, and an end to violence against people and property, and the political recognition of the Palestinians. We dare to speak out in support of their struggle and dare to dream with them. Tonight we welcome everybody, Jewish, of another faith or of none. There is no test of religiosity or observance, or of denomination or politics. If this is your first Seder, and a particular reference to Stephen, this is your first Seder, or your 91st Seder, Richard Cooper, your 91st Seder, you are equally welcome. You are equally welcome. The organizers, and there are many of them, trust you will be inspired by the content and solidarity that you experience and feel this evening. This Haggadah in good socialist tradition is a collective work, but if you've got any comments, you're welcome to send them to me, who was the editor of the Haggadah, and my email is d.rich@theliberalrabbi.org. It's customary to begin the formal proceedings, the Jewish proceedings in the evening, with the lighting of candles. And so it's on page 5 in your Haggadah, and Asher and Dorothy Nelson will light the festival candles for us.
Okay. So I'm going to give this.
There it is, good.
And I'll give another one to you, Asher. Okay.
Nelson, I did see you before, but I can't see you now.
No.
There you are. Wonderful. I can see you now.
Okay, ready?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Pesach.
Amen.
Blessed
Oh,
art,
yes. Amen.
blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with thy commandments and commanded us to kindle the Pesach lights.
Amen.
Amen.
And
Did
then
you
since
want
this
to
is...
do the Shechianu as well?
Oh, lovely. Yes, please. That'll save me doing it. Lovely to have another voice. Yes, please.
It might be more me than the children.
We weren't expecting that.
Okay. Well, we'll give it a go. Come on, Dorothy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kihimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And now we move to immediately, just for those of you who are desperate for something to drink, to the first cup of wine. This is the first of 4 cups. 4 is one of the magical numbers of Pesach. We've got 4 questions, 4 cups, 4 types of children, and all sorts of things that we could talk about the number 4, but I'm sure that you really want to drink very quickly. So if you've poured yourself a drink, we say,
Thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. You can now drink your glass of wine, leaning to the left, of course. Of course we lean to the left. Where else could we lean to? Some of us couldn't lean much farther to the left before we'd fall over completely. But nevertheless, the Roman tradition of free men and women, of free men in particular, was that they would recline on couches leaning to the left, usually served food and drink by semi-clad men and women, but nevertheless, I'm not recommending that for you this evening, but I am recommending you lean to the left at the appropriate time, if you so wish. And that indicates to you a Roman custom. And it just gives me the opportunity to remind us all that anybody who speaks about the purity of one faith or another is talking complete nonsense, because all faiths and all ways of life pick up from customs around them. They pick up from the Jewish faith, picked up from Rome, from Greece, and later still. That's why some of you have potatoes on your Seder plate, because you picked up the Polish custom rather than the older one of lettuce. All sorts of customs that people pick up on the way. And so the Roman custom to lean is only one of many. You're immediately going to have something to eat now, which is also a Roman custom. There was a Roman custom to have green vegetables dipped in all sorts of things as an hors d'oeuvre. We take a green vegetable to remind us of spring. We dip it in salt water to remind us that when we cry, things get a bit salty. And so it is that I'm going to ask you to take from your Seder plate or from somewhere else some green vegetable of some description. It's often karpas, parsley, or watercress, but it can be any piece of green that you like or don't like, in my case, since I don't eat vegetables. And you can recite with me, having dipped it in salt water and hopefully not dripped it all over the place. You can say the foot of the page 5, or it could be over to page 6, depending which
all the people watching, but I'm not there. Celebrating.
Baruch atah Adonai. You want me to raise my thank you for whoever asked that question. I do often not have my camera in the right place. I'm not a natural in front of the camera. Anyway, let us now eat our first hors d'oeuvre, green vegetables, and we recite together Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'adamah, praising the Eternal One for the fruit of the earth.
Which one you have offended?
On to matzah. Matzah being the central food of the Pesach, essentially being well, it's a conundrum of Pesach. How is it we're forbidden to have things of wheat on Pesach, but the major food we eat is matzah made of wheat? And of course, it is not considered to have risen. It's not considered to be chametz. This really is Jewish fast food. It has to rise in not more than 18 minutes. And of course, it has two memories. Yes, I can see somebody's got gluten-free matzah. Thank you for the Mendelssohns. It really is the most disgusting matzah you can buy usually. And not only that, but you pay 7 times the usual price for the gluten-free one. I know from experience. Oh, somebody's got it. £3 a box. Yes, not quite 7 times, but nearly. Now, the matzah is this real conundrum made of the things that are forbidden for Pesach, known sometimes as the bread of affliction or poverty, but also known as the bread of liberation on the one hand. So on the one hand, it has this negative connection with this was all you got if you were a slave, a bit of dry bread. But on the other hand, it becomes transformed to be the bread of liberation, because according to the Hebrew Bible, the slaves left Egypt in great haste and didn't really have time to do much kneading. Having said that, it's the oldest name for Pesach is actually Chag HaMatzot, the festival of unleavened bread, probably because this time would be the first grain, barley harvest usually, in the Middle East. So you would have had to keep your bread all the way through the winter. So immediately the first harvest arrives, you throw out your old bread and you celebrate the new bread. And so here it is, as it says, food, as everyone from a Jewish background knows, is hugely important in Jewish families. And Jews always feel that it is uniquely important to us. It is woven into our festivals, our writings, our humor, and of course our religious rituals, prohibitions and requirements relating to food. Food matters greatly, of course, to all people, and we think particularly Palestinians and other peoples of the Middle East who produce volumes of bread and other salads and everything, and meat and fish that continues to go until you really literally can't eat anymore, as a symbol of hospitality and welcome. And so food matters, of course, not only to Israelis, to Palestinians, to Jews, but to everybody. It's essential for sustenance, but it represents security, love, plenty, generosity, welcome, visitation. Thankful as we are for what is on our tables, we do not forget the hungry, whether clients of the local food bank or victims of global famine. As I've said, central to Pesach is this one food, matzah, the bread of affliction, this flat biscuit baked in extreme haste by those fleeing oppression, who had no time to wait for the dough to rise. The matzah reminds us that when liberation comes, we must seize it, even if we do not feel ready. Indeed, if we wait until we feel fully ready, we may never act at all. Good message for revolutionaries. You can't wait till the revolution has started before you start it, says the matzah. A timely message for all who hope that whatever world emerges from coronavirus, it ought to be one where hunger is abolished, freedom is ensured, and the bonds of human dependence and love conquer selfishness at a local and wider perspective. And I'm going to read just one tiny little paragraph in Aramaic. Aramaic was the language of the Jews, certainly in the year naught and in the period when the second temple was being destroyed and the Pesach Seder rituals were being invented. And this is a little bit of Aramaic, and if you know any Hebrew, some of you clearly will, you'll hear the similarities between Aramaic and Hebrew in what I'm going to read now. Halachma anya di achalu avtahana ar'a de Mitzrayim. Kol difin yete v'yechul. Kol ditzrich yete v'yifsach. Hashata hacha. Lashata da atya. Ar'a de Israel. Hashata avdei. Lashata da atya b'nei chovim. This matzah is the bread of affliction our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who need come and share our Pesach. This year here, next year in the land of Israel. This year oppressed, next year free, whatever land you live in. And we're moving on page 8 in your Haggadah to the 4 questions. And the 4 questions, the rest of the Seder is about answering these 4 questions, particularly the Seder plate. And I'm delighted that we have somebody who's going to, I hope, sing them for us. Zephyr Schlossberg. Now, I've seen your family come in somewhere.
Yes, hi, we're here. Can you hear us?
I can see you all, Justin and family. How lovely to see you.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Solidarity, everyone.
Hello.
Are you going to sing the 4 questions for us?
So this is Luna. She's going to sing the first question because she's the youngest. She's 4.
Wonderful.
Zeffy's going to sing question 2 and 3 because he's 6. And since I'm the next youngest, I'll sing the 4th one.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Go.
Mami stana halela haze miko halela miko halelot shebahu halelot anu wakin hame tu matzah hame tu matzah halela haze
Kulo matzah, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah.
Shebahu halelot anu wahin she'ari rekot halayla hazeh Maru halayla hazeh Maru Shebahu halaylot ein anu mabilin afilu פעמרת, אפילו פעמרת, הלילה הזה, שתפר עמי, הלילה הזה, שתפר עמי.
שבחו חלילות אנו אוכלים, פן יושבינו בין מסובים, פן יושבינו בין מסובים.
הלילה הזה,
כולנו מסובים. הלילה הזה, כולנו מסובים. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. I'm looking in the chat. I realize there's some controversy about the fact that I said next year in Israel. I'm happy to comment on that later on, but I won't be distracted by it now because we have three more questions, Palestinian questions from Ro'a and Riwa Kawasama, who are in Hebron, I hope.
Yes, we are here.
Wonderful. How lovely to see you again. And you have some questions and some observations for us.
Yes, we have the three questions are going to be answered by two twin daughters. And of course, now we have our youngest kid that came into the picture. Daughter Riwa is going to answer.
Recognizing that we are all humans and respect should be the basis to solve the conflict, we want to build bridges, not walls.
Yes, we want to build bridges, not walls. The second question, what are our hopes? And that will be answered by my daughter Riwa.
We hope to live in freedom for the occupation to end and have the possibility to reach our potential without fear, without checkpoints, without fear of nightly raids, and without prison.
And the last question is, what are our dreams?
That we can all live free and equal. That we are free to dream and to achieve our dreams.
Yes, so that is it from our part, sir.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see you from Hebron. We wish you a peaceful Easter, and we have a break in this country, a holiday break, so I hope you will have some holiday too. And we wish you peace and well-being, and thank you very much for a wonderful contribution and joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
I'm now moving on as we get to the Exodus story, which will be told by Diana Nelson. It's on page 12 in your Haggadah.
Passover is the time of memory. We remember that we were slaves in Egypt. We try to imagine the horrors that our people suffered. Salvation came in the form of 10 plagues. The children of Israel were spared the plagues, but through their agency were liberated from bondage. We are told that in each generation, an enemy will rise up to smite us, not necessarily in human garb. COVID is our plague, our form of enslavement. We lost agency to make our own choices. We felt the yoke of separation from our nearest and dearest, and some of us have suffered illness and grievous loss. However, we can begin to see a form of liberation. made possible through the intense work and united effort in the service of humanity by skilled practitioners, dreamers who believed in solutions. And so we can perhaps look forward, like the children of Israel, to a better future. Such building blocks can encourage us to dream of the possibility of change, but dreams are only the start. We must struggle to achieve them, not only as the world did in confronting a deadly pandemic, but in confronting the violence and subjugation of people. The Palestinian people denied their rightful place in the world by decisions taken by politicians of Israel in the name of the Jewish people. But which those of us here tonight find insupportable. Overcoming a deadly pandemic shows that nothing is insurmountable if the clarity of vision, unity of purpose, and willingness to struggle are the tools we fashion to build a better world. And in Israel and Palestine, that must be the reality for all of us. Tragically, the coronavirus pandemic and the current vaccination rollout have continued the inequities and inequalities of occupation.
Thank you, Diana.
Ian has arrived, Danny.
And that's very appropriately followed by Danya Cohen from B'Tselem.
Danny, our magician has magicked himself back into existence.
Ah, Ian, where are you? Ian?
I'm here.
Wonderful. Ian, we want you please to hide the afikoman.
Yes, I'm just going to get the afikoman. Just a minute. I've got the this is all the matzah, and oh yeah, here it is. It's hello. Hello. Sorry,
Can we put the video directly on, Ian?
Yeah.
Mike, hang on, Mike. Can we?
No, I can't control his video. I haven't.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Yeah, I can see. It's all right.
No.
If you go to speaker view, everybody, you'll be able to see Ian even better.
Yeah.
Go on gallery view onto speaker view.
Yeah, never mind about Ian. Have a look at me. Look at this. Look, you've never seen a talking afikoman before, have you? Sorry, you are the afikoman. Yeah, you're not Alfie Cohen. No, I'm not Alfie Cohen. I'm afikoman. Right. Okay. So, what are we going to do with you now? Well, I wanted you to do a little. Well, I was going to sing a little song. Had enough of Tory government. Had enough of Boris Johnson. Had enough of coronavirus.
Dianu.
Yeah, Dianu. That's enough. All right, that's enough of you. I'll tell you what we're going to do now, afikoman. I've got a nice red cloth here. I want to stand back so everybody can see it. I'm going to place the afikoman down on the table for a minute. I'm going to tie the cloth, hold the cloth up, and I'm going to put the, oh, there he is. The afikoman goes in the cloth like this. You all right? Yeah, I'm all right. You're sure? Yeah, okay. And now we say the magic words: mass action for a radical transformation of society. From a society, you're still in there? Yeah, I'm still in there. I know. Yeah. Mass action for a radical transformation of society from a society based primarily on profit to a society based on human need. And he's gone. Oh my goodness.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
We've lost the afikoman. We will see if in 20 minutes we can find it.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Ian.
Look around.
God bless. Right, let us now I'm just going back to gallery view. I'm delighted that our next speaker is Danya Cohen. Danya Cohen is from B'Tselem. B'Tselem is an Israeli human rights organization working in the West Bank, occupied territories, Palestinian territories, whatever term you use for them. But I'm hoping that Danya Cohen is our first speaker, will be there. Danya.
Hi, my name is Danya Cohen. I'm American born from the Washington, D.C. area. I made Aliyah in 1999 and have been living in Israel for nearly 22 years. I was a member of the Habonim Jewish Socialist Zionist Youth Movement in my youth. I am proud to have served as the International Relations Officer for B'Tselem, which is the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, since 2014. I'm here to talk briefly about B'Tselem. B'Tselem, since 1989, has been one of Israel's most prominent voices of opposition to the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories. B'Tselem monitors and documents the impact of the Israeli occupation on human rights in the occupied territories through original research and advocates for the end of the Israeli occupation to wide audiences in Israel and around the world. On Passover, Jewish people all around the world are obliged to remember that we were once slaves in Egypt. We must remember slavery not as a distant historical memory, but rather we must regard the Jewish historical experience as a personal experience, as if we ourselves were slaves in Egypt. Today, I ask you to acknowledge that we ourselves, Israelis and Jews, are oppressing the Palestinian people living under Israeli occupation, either directly by our own government or indirectly in our name, in the name of the Jewish state, through a military dictatorship in the occupied territories, which is carried out in a cruel system of organized state violence against the Palestinian people. Then we were the oppressed and the Egyptians were the oppressor. Today, we are the oppressor and the Palestinians are the oppressed. I am not making a historical comparison between slavery and occupation, but rather a symbolic one. We should hear the demand to remember slavery as a personal experience, as an opportunity to also hear the call to end the occupation of the Palestinian people, as a personal obligation to work for the end of the Israeli occupation. I would now like to offer what I see as the 10 plagues of the occupation. Number 1, the permit regime, controlling Palestinian movement, the population registry and family unity through an opaque and arbitrary system of permits, imprisonment and denial of freedom of tens of thousands of Palestinians since 1967, restrictions of Palestinian movement all around the occupied territories and to and from abroad, the military siege over Gaza since 2007, the killing and wounding of thousands of unarmed Palestinians through a permissive open fire policy, demolitions of thousands of homes, businesses, and structures through a planning policy that seeks to push Palestinians out of their homes and off their lands to make way for Israeli interests. Confiscation of Palestinian land and settlement activity to serve Israeli interests. Denial of adequate clean water and electricity for Palestinians all over the occupied territories, especially in the Gaza Strip, which is subject to especially draconian restrictions. Devastation of the olive harvest, agricultural and animal industries, traditional forms of Palestinian subsistence. And health, debilitating the Palestinian health system through control over the entry of medicine, supplies, equipment, and medical training into the occupied territories, especially the Gaza Strip. Now I would like to offer 3 meta-plagues of the occupation. Apathy, disregard for the very humanity of Palestinians and contempt for their lives and property. Impunity, almost total impunity and lack of accountability for all these plagues and more. And finally, the plague of apartheid, dividing Israel and the occupied territories into fragmented islands to serve Israeli interests and carry out a regime serving Jewish supremacy from the river to the sea. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Daniel from B'Tselem, there on the ground. Jews and Israelis working to advance the rights of Palestinians. We now have our first piece of music. I think today is Land Day, and we're going to hear This Land is Our Land.
Kommt mir gewandert in ein Land der Freien, heraus von Mitter wie Mitzrayim, gesucht an Ayem, Jerusalem. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir. Das Land ist dein Land, das Land ist mein Land, von Kalifornien bis Ellis Island. Von die Größe Oswest bis die breite Jahlen. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir.
Ich gehe rüber, die Berg und Täler, und Geringo, von süße Keller, die Ritschkes murmeln, die Vögel singen. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir.
Sehr ist Moja, das Schild ist Wort. Wenn man reinet, steht das mit Honig. Nur auf jener Seite steht dort gar nicht.
Gott ist die Seite von mir und dir. Das Land ist dein Land, das Land ist mein Land. Von Kalifornien bis Ellis Island. Die Größe Oswest ist die breite Jahlen. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir.
Ich will wohnen, zum Freunden, der Weise mit mir, zum Rosenstäuben, durch die Tomane, wer ich gesangen. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir.
Das Land ist dein Land, das Land ist mein Land, von Kalifornien bis Ellis Island, von die Größe Oswest bis die breite Jahlen. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir.
Auf nasse Gassen, in tiefe Sonnens, sehr wie Menschen, wetten die Doris, bei Azadalis, du ihr Erklärung. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir.
Es wird schon gehen, muss sich verstehen, die freie Welt muss sich verwehren, die treuen Samen werden auch zusammen. Das ist ein Land von mir und dir. Das Land ist dein Land, das Land ist mein Land, von Kalifornien
music. And now we're going to hear an inspiring story. We're going to hear from Lana and Gila. Lana is Palestinian, Gila is Israeli. And they're going to talk about the Friendship Village, where they did some work together. And the Friendship Village, by the way, is supported by the British Shalom Salam Trust. And in a minute, we will hear an appeal by the Trust. I'm proud to be a patron of the Trust, which is supporting Israeli, Palestinian, Jewish, and Arab, whatever term you want to use, but bringing peoples together for the good of both parties, both peoples. And but we're going to hear about the Friendship Village with Lana and Gila, please.
Hi all, my name is Lana and I'm from Shab, a village in the Galilee. I'm 25 years old and I'm a BA graduated in Sociology and Political Studies in the University of Haifa, and I'm currently an MA student in Research Sociology. I participated in the Friendship Village workshop on the course Israeli-Palestinian Relations in Israel last year. I remember well that I anticipated to participate as I heard many recommendations about this workshop from former graduates. I myself am a graduate of a bilingual school, one of a very few in Israel. So I did have a chance to meet, know, and conversate with Jews before, but I didn't have any chance for that since I graduated high school. In the workshop, we were able to express our opinions. We learned to know ourselves better, and we could shape our stance regarding the situations better. The dialogue in the workshop gave me tools to cope with people who found it difficult to hear my thoughts, mainly Jews, but not only. It enabled me to create inside me more empathy towards them, and to put myself in their shoes so that I could understand better what was difficult for them. There were many very difficult stands and beliefs in the group, so it was really powerful that we could do all that. As a Palestinian, I never felt comfortable to express myself so freely before in front of Jews in the social and public arenas, and especially in Israeli academy. I was thinking myself all along the workshop, what a courage it takes to conduct such a workshop with such contents in the academy field. I could identify myself as a Palestinian without being considered a threat. It was such a relief to suddenly be able to speak freely about my real identity and feel safe. And it was a relief to know that people that are hearing this can, for the first time in their lives, can listen to it and understand my side of the story. I really hope that such workshop will be conducted in many places. I believe it is important for all the Palestinians in Israel to be able to talk about their identities, feelings, and needs with themselves and with Israeli Jews. Thank you from the depth of my heart. You made me feel that I'm seen and safe and free also.
Thank you, Lana. I can see that you will be a future leader of the Palestinian people, maybe president of your own republic. But thank you very much, Lana, for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
I think we have Gila next.
Accepting and hearing without any agenda. In the meetings, it became clear to me that my whole being was charged with the charges of the Jewish and Zionist narrative with which I fully identify. I knew my side of the equation well, and to me, my narrative was righteous, without anything wrong and with a lot of suffering and pain. I also knew the other side part in the conflict, the Arab side, as a completion to my narrative, cruel, violent, and always tilted towards war, with its declared desire to abolish my existence. In the course, I first became acquainted with the Palestinian Arab narrative and observed it. I had to admit within myself, a little uncomfortably and a little in panic, that the beginning of the conflict could also be seen from a different point of view that is also conceivable. We also heard lectures about the other conflicts in the world where possible solutions were implemented. At the end of the course, I realized that no one has an exclusive hold on suffering and pain. Personally, I can safely say that the course was an eye-opening experience which left a deep impact on me, but also contributed towards some action. For example, since then, whenever I teach my students about the formation of the state of Israel, I make sure I mention both sides of the story. In addition, I invited Breaking the Silence to give a lecture in my kibbutz. I believe every citizen in Israel should go through such a process, and first and foremost, teachers. It was also very meaningful for me that we were all women, and it made me feel very safe, and it made me understand how important we are as women in leading for understanding, justice, and peace.
Thank you, Gila. Two brave women leaders, no doubt leaders of the future in the region. And the workshop they're talking about was partly funded by the charitable efforts of the British Shalom Salam Trust. And I'm now going to ask Richard Cooper to make an appeal on behalf of BSST, the British Shalom Salam Trust.
Thank you, Danny, and welcome to everyone at the Seder. I was asked before I made the appeal if I would tell a Jewish joke or two, and unable to resist, I will take the opportunity. I will try to make them Pesach themed for the occasion. What I like about Jewish jokes, particularly those involving God, is that there is always an element of a bargain and very often a sense of disappointment. He, and it is he, could have done better, like the Pesach haiku, left the door open for the prophet Elijah. Now our cat has gone. One definition of anti-Semitism is Jewish jokes being told by non-Jews, since so many Jewish jokes are about Jewish foibles, which we can laugh at, but it sounds nasty if other people tell them. So I won't go there, except perhaps for one. Ever wondered why there are 10 commandments? Well, they're conflicting accounts in the Talmud. According to the oldest, perhaps Rabbi Ben Kashkasher, the first time Moses came down from Mount Sinai, he said there was a special offer on commandments. So everyone called out, we'll have 10. It was something they later regretted. So Moses was sent back with a different mandate. As Rabbi Ben Chinuch puts it, on his return, Moses said to the assembled Israelites, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Give us the good news. I've kept them down to 10. And the bad news, adultery is in. Okay, Chaim is always an Ashkenazi name in my Jewish joke tradition. Chaim is on his way to shul. Why to shul? He never goes to shul. It's Pesach, but his partner Solly is in shul, and Chaim needs Solly's signature on a document. And so he goes to shul. He doesn't even know where it is. He sets the sat-nav, he gets there. He has to be there by 11 o'clock. He's got half an hour to spare, but there is no parking anywhere. He drives up and down the streets, getting more and more frustrated, doesn't know what to do. And his childhood memories come back and he says, God, give me a place. I'll go to shul. I'll go on Shabbos. I'll go every week. I'll do whatever you want. I have to get to shul in time. And he drives along and suddenly a car ahead of him pulls out and he pulls into the space and he parks and he gets out of the car and he looks to heaven and he says, it's all right, I found a place. Continuing, running it into another Jewish story, he arrives at the synagogue and he says to the shamus at the door, I've got to speak to my partner. The shul is overflowing. Only people there are people who've supported the synagogue, who've bought their seats, who have places. There isn't a spare inch of space. And the shamus says, you just can't come in. And he says, look, I have this business deal. I've got to get my partner to sign. He knows I'm coming. Let me go in and I'll get him out. And the shamus says, all right, but just don't let me catch you praying. When my grandfather died, I was 16. We had morning, afternoon, and evening prayers, Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv, at his flat for a month. And every adult male had to go as often as possible to ensure we had a minyan. The sessions felt interminable, but I guess Shachris was only about 30 minutes, followed by breakfast, and Mincha and Mariv were run together around sunset for another 30 to 40 minutes. A cousin of my father's, whom we were counting on that day to make a minyan, arrived late. But fortunately, someone else had turned up and we'd already been able to start. But he stayed for breakfast and remarked, "I came to pray, but remained to scoff." It reminds me of the first Jewish astronaut up in his capsule, circling the Earth again and again and again, every hour and a half or so, before returning safely to Earth a week later. "How was it?" Everyone wanted to know. "Oi," he said. "Oi, how come? Every 90 minutes, Shachris, Mincha, Mariv." Finally, 3 Jews from Lithuania, Stetela, meeting in Vilna in the 20s for a Talmudic convention in Pesach week, and they start boasting about their rabbis. Danny will know about congregations who boast about their rabbis. The first from Yerberg says, "My rabbi was out in the villages doing good works, and he's on his way back. It's Friday evening, he's on his way back, and suddenly there is the most incredible storm, and there's water everywhere. It's like when the Jews left Egypt, and my rabbi doesn't know what to do, and he makes a bracha, and the waters part, and there's water on his left and water on his right, and he walks through in time for the evening service." The next person from Kroj says, water. You remember in the Bible, God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next time. My rabbi's out in the countryside like yours, servicing the peasants, you know, the Jewish odd people in the villages around. And he comes back and there's this huge fire and he can't get through. So he makes a bracha and there's fire to his left and fire to his right. And where he is, there's no fire. And he walks through in time for the service. And the final one from Yonava, where my family come from. He tells the story of his rabbi. He's out doing good works, driving a car, a motor car in the early 1920s. And he's on his way back and he has a puncture, a real catastrophe, because he says, my rabbi, he knows nothing from cars and how to change a wheel and which way is up, but he eventually finds a way of doing it. And he sets off and he sees it's almost Shabbos and the stars beginning to come out and he makes a bracha and it's Shabbos to his left and Shabbos to his right. But where he is, it's Tuesday afternoon and he drives through in time for the service. The final joke isn't a joke, it's an appeal. It's an appeal for the British Shalom Salam Trust, which was set up, it must be almost 15 years ago, I think, to work to support groups in Israel, Palestine, particularly Palestinians, but also people within Israel itself, who were trying to organize from the ground up, trying to do things which were unpopular, trying to provide services, opportunities, possibilities for people who lack them. It has been doing, how about that? How does that look?
Yeah. Magic.
Okay, this is the last report of the British Shalom Salam Trust. It is a fantastic document. It's available for download, the annual report 2019 to 20. A message from the chair, description of who BSST is, and then it runs through various groups that it has given support to. The Afaj Jadida Association, New Horizons in a refugee camp in Gaza. The Arab Single Mothers Forum in the Lower Galilee. The Aras El Bahar Bride of the Sea in Jaffa, tackling social problems in the redeveloped port area, crime, drug use, unemployment, early marriage, and so on. The Our Team Garden Library in South Tel Aviv. the Damari Society of Gypsies in Jerusalem, the Fragments Theatre in Jenin, Freddie Kravine Initiative, a tennis project encouraging and enabling young Palestinians, especially girls, to play tennis, the Friendship Village, which we've heard from, Future Association for Development and Environment in Gaza, and there is more, and there is more. Over the years, and what are now becoming the decades, the BSST has funded all these small-scale grassroots developments, which usually don't qualify for grants from anyone anywhere else. And it has enabled possibilities, particularly for young people, particularly for Palestinians, particularly for women, that they would otherwise not have had. Can I urge you to give, and to give generously? I know you can't take notes out of your pocket and wave them, or you'll take them out but put them back after you've waved them. There's no way we can collect the actual cash. So what I would urge you to do, please, is to follow the link to BSST, to click on the donation link and to give as generously as you can. BSST has virtually no overheads whatsoever. Everyone gives their time voluntarily. The only cost in producing the annual report was to print a few copies of it. It was put together entirely for free by volunteer labor. Every penny you give to BSST goes to support an important and probably otherwise neglected cause. So can I urge you, please, to give as generously as you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Danny.
And if you were going to give X and you need a glass of wine to give you 2X, then now's the time to have your second glass of wine. So if you were going to donate X this year, I want you to donate 2X to BSST, which does, as we know, some great work.
I mistyped the link in chat and I've just put the correct link in.
Yeah, so the correct is www.bsst.org.uk to donate. And Mike's put it in. It's the second of the two that's gone in. Thank you, Mike. So you need to take your second glass of wine. And we recite together, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. You can now lean to the left and drink again. And now I'm delighted to invite Stefan Feuchtwang. We're on page 14 of the Haggadah. Stefan Feuchtwang.
You did it perfectly. Thank you. And thank you to you and to Annabelle and to Mike, old comrade, and to everybody who's organized this Seder. And I'm already a supporter, but we will give more to BSST as well. I'm here to read a very short prayer that was composed in 1944 for Pesach by the husband of my father's sister, so my uncle, who was then, his name was Benjamin Davids, the chief rabbi of Rotterdam, with whom, as an infant, with my mother and father fleeing the Nazis from Berlin, we stayed for 1 year and then managed to find a sponsor in England and come here. Unfortunately, soon after that, Benjamin Davids, Erika, and their 3 children were rounded up in Holland to go to one gathering camp and then eventually to Belsen. And it was in Belsen that he was asked, he gathered around Jews for Pesach, and that was already itself for all of them a quite brave thing to do. And because they couldn't clean and didn't have matzos, he made a special prayer for eating chametz, which is leavened bread but stale crusts. And So I'll read the prayer, then I have a small comment to make about it. This is the prayer. Heavenly Father, it is apparent to you that our will is to do your will and to celebrate Passover by eating matzah and by refraining from chametz. But on this, our hearts are distressed because the oppression prevents us from fulfilling these commandments, and we find our lives in danger. We are ready and willing to fulfill your mandate that we live by the commandments and not die by them. And we are observing your warning. Protect yourself and sustain your soul greatly. We therefore beseech you to keep us alive, sustain us and redeem us speedily, so that we may observe your statutes, carry out your will, and serve you wholeheartedly. Amen. And then he ate the stale crust. I feel that somehow eating matzah for Pesach now is a sign of our liberation from, or certainly my family's, but not his, unfortunately, from the Nazis. Unfortunately, he and his son did not survive. They became ill and died in Belsen. But his daughters, his two daughters, and Erika, their mother, did escape or were taken on the train to Auschwitz, which was then liberated by the Red Army. And they did survive in Israel. So I'm recommending to you this prayer as a reminder of the liberation from the Nazis, not only of Jews, but of all the others that the Nazis sought to exterminate. And in particular, my own family, and able to eat bread, except today when we can eat matzahs. So thank you. Thank you to Britain.
Stefan, thank you for that moving contribution. And we're now going to have another piece of music. Ruchel.
Fine. Beautiful. Good.
My name's Rachel. It's lovely to be with you tonight. I'm coming to you from East Finchley. This song is called Zog Moran. Tell me, Morano. It was written by Avram Reisen, wrote a poem. Yiddish poet Avram Reisen lived in the latter part of the 1800s and the first half of the 1900s. And the music is by Samuel Brugach. It's about the Marano Jews who practice their Seder in secret. And it says, "My brother, where have you prepared your Seder? In a deep cave, in a hollow, there I prepared my Seder. From where and from whom will you get matzah? In the cave, under God's protection, my wife kneaded the dough. Where will you manage to find a Haggadah? In the cave, in deep recesses, I've been hiding it for a long time. How will you protect yourself when they hear your voice? When the enemy finds me, I will die singing."
Sag Moran, du Bruder meinen, wo ist gerein, der Seide deine, in tiefer Heim, in a Heide, dort wo ich gegreit mein Seide, in tiefer Heim, in a Heide, dort wo ich gegreit mein Seide. Sag Moran, wir vorbei zusammen, kannst du euch so Matzes nehmen, in der Heim, als Gott's verraten, hat mein Weib den Teig geknoten, sein, wird mich fangen, wenn ich sterben mit Gesangen.
Thank you. Lovely to have some music. And now we're about to begin our eating, at least our ritual eating of what is on the Seder plate. And so in front of you, of course, you have matzah, which we'll eat in a moment, but on your Seder plate should be a beitzah, a roasted egg, symbolic, of course, of the spring, the new life, but also what the Jews offered in the temple as part of the Pesach offering. That would be accompanied by the lamb, and so you should have a zeroah, a lamb bone, which I've just, mine seems to have jumped away, but it's here somewhere. I must have knocked it off while I was, well, anyway, you all know what a lamb bone is. I don't need to demonstrate what a lamb bone is, but that's also symbolic that while the temple stood, at Pesach time, each family would offer an offering of lamb. Also on your Seder plate should be what's called chatzeret. Chatzeret is a bitter vegetable of some sort. It could be endive or a type of lettuce. And that is paralleled with another particular herb, maror, bitter herb. So that's 1, 2. And then finally on your Seder plate should be charoset. Nothing halachically Jewish about charoset. It was a Roman condiment, but somehow we Jews managed to take it over and try and pretend that it was the mortar of the pyramids, even though the Egyptians didn't use mortar, or they looked like the bricks that were used to build the pyramids. But anyway, there it is. So if you're eating now, you take a piece of matzah just on its own. First time round. And because it's bread, we have to say, first of all, the bracha for bread, and then we have to say the particular bracha for matzah. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Then, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzor. So we think, first of all, about the earth which brings forth bread, and then we think about the particular commandment to eat matzah, to eat unleavened bread at this season. So go ahead. The next thing which you're permitted to eat is bitter herb. None of this cream stuff. You're supposed to have real pucker bitter herb dug up from your garden, raw, and you're supposed to eat it on its own. We'll come to the charoset in a minute, that myth that you're supposed to have charoset with it. It's on its own. And we say at the foot of that page, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror. You're commanded to eat these bitter herbs as a reminder of the bitterness of slavery. Now, rabbis were actually quite generous people. They knew that the commandments were hard for Jews to keep, and they knew that eating maror might not be so easy. So they made a concession that you can, if you wish, now have maror and charoset together. And the reason you can have those together is because you can think about the bitterness of slavery combined with the sweetness of liberation. Now it's hard, if you've got a piece of raw maror, you can just dip it in charoset, or as an allowance, you can put both on a matzah. I will allow that. So you put maror together with bitter herb. There's no blessing for this because it's not part of the halachic eating process, but to have the sweetness and the thing going together is rather nice. So put charoset on one side. This is not a Hillel sandwich. We'll come to Hillel sandwich in a minute. This is a Danny sandwich, this is. Maror on one side, charoset on the other side, and eat them together and feel the bitterness going up your nose, but the sweetness that follows. Finally, I think this is the bottom of page 15. is the Hillel sandwich. Hillel was the leader of the Jewish people in about the time of the year naught. And Hillel used to go into the temple like all Jews and have matzah, bitter herbs and lamb. Well, since the fall of the temple, you can't have the lamb anymore, paschal lamb. So you just have matzah and maror in a sandwich called the Hillel sandwich after the leader of the Jewish people at the time. I'm spilling maror. And we say, this is what Hillel used to do when the temple still stood. He would combine the paschal lamb and unleavened bread and bitter herbs and eat them together to fulfill the verse, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs shall they eat it, the paschal lamb. So you can hear me crunching away. You can't know, who's going to have a lamb sandwich? You can't have a lamb sandwich. Even I'm not that liberal. Okay. Now, you got any charoset left on your Passover plate? I'll allow you to finish it off, or any maror, because in a very few moments, I'm hoping that Ian Saville will rejoin us and help us to find the afikomen, because tradition says we can't carry on with the rest of the stuff, and there's lots of good stuff still to come until we found the afikomen. So I'm hoping that in any minute now, Ian will be back to assist us. We're just eating our charoset, Ian, and then we'll call you back in.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Not now.
Well, give us 1 minute, Ian, to eat our charoset, and then we want to find it. We know you're keen.
That's okay.
Everybody finished their charoset now? Right. Mike, are we ready to find the afikomen? Mike?
Ian.
Yes.
Yes, we are ready
Hello.
to find the afikomen, Ian.
Yeah, I've framed it, except I can't see it at the moment. This is by the way, this is our egg, roasted egg, but we are vegan, so it's it's a bouncy egg, so it bounces about. We've also, by the way, we've got beetroot that has some sort of symbolic significance, and also an orange for those who need an orange. And we've got some really nice. Charoset.
The beetroot is to make it look like part of a blooded lamb, but it isn't really lamb.
All right. Okay.
And
do you want to tell us about the orange?
The orange is about inclusion, because there was a very famous woman rabbi who was once asked about, whether there could be, much chance of having woman rabbis there was about having orange on a Seder plate. So she decided from there on to have an orange on the Seder plate.
Yeah. So we always have the orange now as well on the Seder plate, as well as this horseradish, which I just ate a whole mouthful and I was almost dying. But anyway, I thought I'd have a picture of the afikomen here, because I can't find the actual afikomen, but there's nothing in the frame. So I will once again have to say the magic words: mass action for a radical transformation of society, from a society based primarily on profit to a society based on human need. Oh, there he is.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Ian Saville, socialist magician and historian. Great to have you with us again. It really is a treat. Particularly for boring old rabbis like me, who are rationalists. We love this magic. We don't believe in the Kabbalah, but we do believe in Ian Saville. So, thank you, Ian. And we're now going to, it's third cup of wine, guys. You'll be relieved to know. If you were so shocked by finding the Afikomen, now time to have a third cup of wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. Drink your cup of wine. Somebody said, is he available for bookings? Well, I don't know, but we ought to have a BSST special event, oughtn't we, really? When Ian does magic and we raise a lot of money for BSST amazing projects. If you're happy to do it, Ian, I'll MC it and we'll have a great evening somewhere. How about that? All right, so there we are. You haven't got a booking for your bar mitzvah, you can book in for the BSST bar mitzvah, which probably is already gone, but nevertheless. Okay, I'm now delighted that we've got some more visitors. First of all, from Israel, we should have Atalia Ben Abba.
Hello, my name is Atalia Ben Abba. I'm a 28-year-old activist from Israel. 5 years ago, in 2017, conscription to the Israeli military. Because conscription is mandatory in Israel, I was sent to military prison where I spent 110 days. I refused to serve in the Israeli military because I chose to not take part in the Israeli oppression of the Palestinian people. I chose to become a conscientious objector because I wanted to express clearly and loudly that I will not take part in the oppression and the occupation of the Palestinian people. Taking a clear and unafraid stand against the apartheid in Israel is a rare position. Politicians and media channels demonize every person that dares to speak out against the occupation.
Here now.
It is seen as treacherous to stand in solidarity with the struggle of the Palestinian people. Hence, this is the exact reason it was so important to me to be loud and bold about my decision. I felt as though I had to take a personal responsibility for being on the side of the occupier. I could not just keep on living my peaceful life while these injustices are happening. Even though I was scared of being sent to military prison and of the consequences of being an outcast, I thought and still think I made the right choice. Being a conscientious objector gave me the platform to reach more people and show them that things need to change. Moreover, it allowed me to reach a hand to Palestinian partners and show them I will not take part in their oppression. I can show them I stand together with them. I believe only a joint struggle based in solidarity and connection can lead to the end of the occupation. And so, I dare to dream that through choosing to act and to see it as our responsibility to fight against injustice, we can bring an end to it.
I know that some of you couldn't hear all of that, but this is Atalia Ben Abba, who's a conscientious objector. As you know, Israel requires a military service as somebody who didn't seek to be excused on medical grounds, but said her conscience wouldn't allow her to do some of the things that are required of Israeli soldiers. And Atalia, we thank you for being with us this evening. I'm hoping now that Alon Liel, the former Israeli ambassador to South Africa, is with us this evening. Alon Liel, who I think was going to be live. Can any organizer help me with Alon Liel?
I can't see him in the list.
I don't see him.
I'm not sure who his contact was. If he's not there at the moment, I'm going to ask Annabelle, who's been one of the organizers, Annabella Sreberny, who's got something to share with us.
Thank you, Danny. You do just spit the name out. Yeah. One significant moment in the Seder is often to welcome in Elijah, the prophet. On Saturday, my 2-year-old grandson took a goblet to the door, calling for Elijah in case he arrived. so we took it quite seriously. Although a friend told me that their father used to dress up in a white sheet and become Elijah the ghost who spooked everyone. I think that's another example of the inventiveness and playfulness that the Seder invites. Many of us want to include women and the feminine more into the Seder, so we put out a beaker of water for Miriam, which is probably a more thirst-quenching refreshment for the long traveler. In some ways, this all speaks to traditions of hospitality and generosity in many cultures, especially in the Middle East, but which are being thinned out by neoliberal individualism, by fortress Europe, and by Britain's increasingly cruel immigration policies. But we can see that openness to others internationally, with volunteers working in refugee camps in Syria, in Turkey, in Greece, in France. And during COVID, it's been seen a great deal at the local level, in Britain, with community-run food banks and ordinary people providing all sorts of support to those in need. The other element of the Elijah story is the messianic hope that heralds a world in which all peoples will coexist peacefully, and when we bury in the past the pain others inflicted upon us. But we also know what the popular longing for father figures, for great male leaders can take us. Many of us now think of godness as a form of human goodness, as the positive human spirit that lives within each of us. So perhaps we can turn the image of the strange visitor inside out and welcome those parts of ourselves that we haven't allowed to be manifest, or which always seem so weak and impotent in the face of real power. Perhaps we can find the Elijah and the Miriam inside ourselves and invite them out a bit more. We could enhance our capacities for love, for solidarity, creativity, for a world where people live in harmony with nature and with each other. We need to dare to dream and to act.
Thank you. I did hear that this year at last Elijah was going to turn up to have his wine, but at the last minute he read the COVID regulations and realized he couldn't come into our homes anyway. So off for another year. I want to read a poem by Langdon Hughes. Democracy will not come today, this year, nor ever through compromise and fear. I have as much right as the other fellow has to stand on my own 2 feet and own the land. I tire so of hearing people say, let things take their course. Tomorrow is another day. I do not need my freedom when I'm dead. I cannot live on tomorrow's bread. Freedom is a strong seed, planted in a great need. I live here too. I want freedom, just as you.
Yeah.
Danny, we're looking for you.
We're moving towards the end of our Seder, but not quite. So the 4th cup of wine's coming up. So if you have wine with you, where's my glass gone? There it is. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, orei peri hagaven. Now I'm going to ask Naomi Wayne.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. We couldn't have a Seder night, a liberation Seder night, without a contribution from the greatest Palestinian poet, Mahmoud Darwish. And I'd like to thank Stephen Marks, if he's here. I found this tiny extract that he'd posted on his Facebook page, and I thought it was one of the most hopeful, optimistic, and dreamlike things I'd ever read. It comes from his last poem, The Dice Player, which is very long, but this is just 6 lines. When the sky appears ashen, and I see a rose that has suddenly burst out of a crack in a wall, I don't say, the sky is ashen. I extend my study of the rose and say to it, what a day. Thank you.
And what an evening we've had, really, as we're moving to the end. But before we do move in, I want to give a private message in public, really. Jeremy Corbyn and Laura Alvarez, I don't know if you can see my maror here. I'm waving. I can't see myself. It's a reasonably impressive one from my parents-in-law garden, but I'm looking forward to having some from your allotment for next year. Since you've now become experts in growing maror. So we're now moving to our final song, and it's in Yiddish, and here we go. Rochel again.
Hi again, everybody. This song is Yiddish.
We can't hear you at the moment. Hang on, Rochel, hang on a second, we can't hear you.
It's as loud as it will go.
Okay.
Can we all join in instead, Mike?
This song is my performance of this song is recorded Barry Davis in honor of Barry Davis, who translated it from the Italian into Yiddish.
Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 es steht wie Morgen, hab ich gehabt sie, und der Säulen steht herum, ein Partisane, nimm mich auf Decki, ein bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, Partisane, nimm mich auf Decki, was zu schlafen bin ich dreh. Als ich starb, ja Partisane, bei bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Und als ich starb, ja Partisane, musst du mich mekeiner sein. Verkroppen, in Welt wie heute, bei bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Verkroppen, in Welt wie heute, der Käfer quält verschottenen. And as ich Menschen, will ich vorbeigehen, bei bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Und als die Menschen wollen vorbeigehen, wenn sie sollten a schöne Blume. Es ist die Blume von Partisane, bei bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Es ist die Blume von Partisane. Ach, Gordon war unser Heeres Beats join me. Yai, dai, dai, yai, dai, 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 yai, dai, dai, dai.
Bravo. Okay, friends, we are reaching conclusion, and may I, on behalf of us all, thank everybody who's taken part in any way. We are still at 160 participants, and it's 20 to 9. I said we'd be finished well before 9, and we will be. But particularly to Mike, who's been on the techniques all evening, but to so many of you who've edited the Haggadah, organized films and speakers, whether you've spoken yourself, whether you provided singing, wonderful singing, or recorded music or words, thank you. And I'm going to conclude with this final prayer, and then that will conclude our Seder, and we'll keep the little thing open for a little while until Mike says Dayenu, which means enough. So we conclude thus. Our Seder is now completed. We have followed the order, told the story, performed the rites, sung the songs, and reflected on the particular relevance of the message of Pesach to the Jews and of its universal resonance for all peoples. Chag Sameach LePesach. Have a great Pesach. Shavua Tov. Have a good week.
I'm going to unmute everyone so you can all say Shag Pesach Sameach. Happy Passover to everyone else. I have put in 3 links into the chat for Jewish Voice for Labour, Jews for Justice for Palestine, and Independent Jewish Voices, which are the 3 organisations that sponsored this evening along with BSST. And if you are not already a member of any or all of those, I hope you will consider joining us. We are all working hard for peace and freedom here and peace and freedom in Palestine, and we need your support. So please unmute yourself and say Shag Pesach Sameach.
Shag
Pesach Sameach.
Pesach Sameach.
Solidarity.
Evening. Worth it for this land is my land and nothing else.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ending it now. That sounded just like the Seder table at my parents' house through my youth. Good night. I'm closing this down.
Bye.
Next time in real life.
Next year in peace and freedom.
Mike, did you go to Cheder?
Yes, of course I did.
Right.
And to Zionist Sunday school.